Hi there. Welcome to Small Business Coffee Break, the video series where we take a few minutes to work on your business, not just in it. Today we talk about 3 myths about corporate entities with Lillian of Ter & Associates. Lily has over 20 years of experience in corporate and real estate law, so grab a cup of coffee and let's get into it. If you could, 3 myths about corporations that you hear lots of people come to you and say that we can dispel today.
Well, let's talk about corporate entities rather than just corporations, because I think that that's sort of interchangeable for many people. So it's either an LLC or corporation. There are others, but let's just stick to those 2. So I think that 3 myths. The first one would be that everyone that's listed on Sunbiz is an owner. Well, that's not necessarily true. So you can have 5 people listed, let's say under an LLC as a member. But separately, there is an operating agreement in place that the public cannot see. And so in that document, it could be that one of those individuals maybe has 2% of ownership, and the rest, 98%, is shared by the other 3. Or that individual may not have any ownership, but that is an authorized representative of the company. So it's not always what is seen on Sunbiz is actually what is going on. Another myth is that is again about the percentage of ownership. Let's say you have 2 people listed under an LLC on Sunbiz. That doesn't mean that they're 50% owners, because there could be an operating agreement in place where it's a 60-40 split or a 30-70 split, or whatever other kind of
199 split, all depending on the situation.
Same thing with a corporation. You may not list all of the officers of the corporation on Sunbiz, or one of those officers may not be an owner. Perhaps you have a higher level manager that you might want to identify as a secretary of that corporation. Well, that secretary may not have shares of that corporation. So it's misleading oftentimes. Another myth is that Delaware is the place to incorporate.
Wait, hold on a second. Okay, so what do you mean Delaware's not necessarily the best place to incorporate?
It's not. If you are a Florida company, there's no reason really for you to go into Delaware. Delaware does offer additional protection as far as identity is concerned, as to who owners are, who's associated with a company. So in that respect, often people like to go through Delaware. But if you are primarily going to be a Florida corporation, you should incorporate or form an LLC in Florida. The other thing that you have to keep in mind, if you decide to incorporate or create an LLC under Delaware, that you may be required to defend against a lawsuit in Delaware when you're here in Miami. That's not a situation you might want to find yourself in. And you are going to, it depends on how you lay out your contracts as to what law is to be applied. Do you want to apply Florida law? Do you want to apply Delaware law? Do you want to apply New York law? In many international cases, you may want to go with New York law because it's much more favorable. So there's a lot of components into answering that question, and it all depends. This is a typical lawyer question. It all depends.
Right. Yeah. Well, it's funny.
Depends on your situation.
That's the answer for everything in insurance too. Is this covered? Well, it depends. But what I'm understanding is so the reason why many folks, or maybe it's gotten so common that you hear Delaware as a corporation is because there's some protection from a who's the owner perspective. It's harder, not impossible, I'm assuming, harder to figure out all those things, and maybe requires more work, which may deter some situations from escalating beyond maybe the more similar nuisance situations. I'm guessing. I'm not a lawyer. But that the reality is that unless you're really well versed and your corporation is or your corporate entity is a bit more sophisticated, you could be doing more harm than good. Because, for instance, I know that Lilly Sir is an expert in corporate law here in Florida. And I know that if I'm going to you, you're going to be able to represent me from the Florida perspective very well.
That's correct.
I may not know a Lily Sir in Delaware, but may be forced to find one, which creates a whole nuance of issues for me.
Absolutely.
At that time. Because at the end of the day, one of the only pieces of advice I give regarding law to my customers is when you're looking for a lawyer, make sure they're a lawyer specialized in the field for the claim that's being defended or being made.
That's good advice.
Because all the time I'll see someone go to a real estate lawyer for corporate situations, or a workers' compensation lawyer for a real estate problem, and it's not that they're incapable, but they don't have the experience, I suppose, necessary.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely
I've just seen it too many times. We were talking about a closing recently that we both had an opportunity to see, and how there were lawyers who may not have been real estate lawyers involved in the process, which made it a bit more clunky than it absolutely needed
Clunky's
to be.
a good word.
Very cool, very cool. If you have any questions you'd like to ask Lily, I put her contact information in the description. If you have any questions you'd like me to ask Lily or any other professional in their field, my contact information is also in the description. See you next week for another cup of coffee and more questions answered.